Welcome to a new edition of Bully. Bully chats from time to time with people that the team, comprising Datu Ambika Srinivasan, Ranjit Singh, Gopal Srinivasan, Jaden Lewis, and myself, Shaku Vadakar, with people that we think are exciting and interesting. Today, Ambika and I are thrilled to be talking to the phenomenal Malaysian artist, Ahmad Zakii Anwar. We're in his beautiful home, which is also his gallery and his studio. And thank you, Zaki, for letting us come here. And thank you, Suryani, his lovely wife and manager, for letting us be here. Ahmad Zakii Anwar is one of the most important and admired artists in Southeast Asia. He's renowned for his photorealistic animals, his large Michelangelo-esque male nudes, his sensual and playful still lifes of fruits and vegetables, and much, much more. He's also one of the most successful artists in Malaysia. His record painting that sold for almost $250,000, that's US dollars 53,982 to be precise, for his work entitled Encore 2, which was sold by Christie's in Hong Kong. So thank you, Zaki, for letting us come here, and thank you for talking to us today. So apart from magazines like Life magazine and the cinemas, was there a person that might have inspired you to go into art?
Not really, not in the early days, because I was in Johor Bahru and most of the practicing artists were in KL, so I hardly met anyone, any prominent artist in Johor Bahru. So it was just a natural inclination, to draw, to make art.
And then you went to Mara Institute of Technology, School of Art and Design.
Yes.
And you're saying your parents were a bit worried.
Yes. I've always wanted to be a painter, so in the School of Art and Design, there are various courses, if you want to be a painter, you have to take fine arts, But my parents were a bit worried, and they thought I'm going to starve and they have to support me all their life, So I did an alternative, I took up graphic design instead.
That was a compromise.
It was a compromise, so that I can still go into art school, but I studied design. Yeah, and so that sort of led me into advertising for many years, I was in advertising and publishing for about 12, 15 years. Yeah.
As long as that?
Yeah. But I was freelancing, I worked full-time as 9 to 5 for about a year and a half. But that lifestyle just doesn't suit me. So I quit and I started freelancing as an illustrator and designer.
But you had very big clients like Singapore Airlines, and you were doing well.
Yeah.
Was the money good? Or?
Yeah. Eventually, I moved down to JB, and I started freelancing in Singapore, and I was freelancing with an agency which handled Singapore Airlines, and also Singapore National Tourist Promotion Board. So I used to work on those campaigns, and I used to service basically about 2 agencies in Singapore. Yeah, and that was enough to keep me busy. Yeah.
But did you enjoy it, Zaki?
Well, in the beginning, yes, but after a while, as I reached 40, I realized that if I don't stop this and start painting, I'll never be a real artist, So when I was about 39, I decided to quit. I told everyone, that's it, no more jobs. I took a year off and I started painting. It wasn't easy in the beginning, because after years, in advertising, you every time you get a job, you're given a job brief, and they tell you what they want and what this thing is all about, whatever they're selling, So when you're on your own, suddenly, it's like you're waiting for a job brief, Yeah,
Just you and the canvas.
Yeah, yeah, so you don't know what to do. But I was fortunate. I met a very senior artist, and he said, you're thinking too much. He said, you're exhausted before you reach the canvas. He said, the thinking should be on the canvas and not in your head.
So he was your inspiring person.
It was Latif Muhyiddin. Yeah, and he said, he asked me what is my strongest point, talent. I said I'm good. I'm a realist. He said then use that. You start simple and just build on it. Don't think too much. He says. And that's what I did. That's how the still lifes came about. Because before that I was trying to be too clever. You're trying to do something heavy and conceptual and all that. But you're not ready. So after meeting Latif, I decided, okay, I'm gonna start with the ABCs, and still life is actually the simplest form of painting. You take an object, compose it nicely, and you paint it. You don't think too much about what it means, or as long as it's well done, well composed. So I started on this series of still lifes.
And you've described your first successful still life was the vase and the ceramic bowl.
The vase and the ceramic bowl, which I sold, I was so happy, Yeah, but anyway, the still life later evolved into the series on the fruits and vegetables,
The sensual series.
Yeah, the naughty fruits.
Okay, and I was just talking to Valentine Willie earlier today, and you had your first major solo exhibition at his gallery, and I was there. I actually came to the opening, and remember being wowed by this. Wow, who is this person? So what's it like? And Valentine describes that he was so taken by your work that it was so halus, it was so fine, and there's so much skill and workmanship involved. And he was particularly impressed by your placement. He said, no one can compose a painting like you can. And he thought it was from your graphic design training, but I think it's from your cinema experience.
Yeah, from both, I would say.
Sort of space, the use of space.
The use of space. Like I was saying, how aware you place an object is extremely important, and what goes on in the background, what goes on in the foreground, whether it's going to be light or dark, all elements play a very important part, And normally before I start painting, I have a vision of it. I can sort of see, or I can feel it actually. Okay. Maybe not exactly see it, but I can feel it, And when I'm painting, that is what guides me actually, trying to manifest that feeling, Every stroke you're putting on canvas, is a step towards that feeling, that you had when you first saw the painting in your mind. Normally when you see something and you want to paint it, your heart will skip a bit. You get excited. You get excited. You have that feeling. That feeling becomes the marker thing that I'm aiming for. And when you see something in your mind, it's always hazy. It's never, like a complete picture, So when you're painting, you're searching. You're searching, all the visual elements, the colors, the shadows, You're sort of trying to get close to what you felt,
Okay, so Valentine was telling me how, the two of you would plan an exhibition, and sometimes it would be a whole year ahead. Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about what is involved in putting on an exhibition?
Normally, a solo, if let's say if it's a solo exhibition, it should be at least a year, maybe more. I would prefer at least a year and a half or 2 years. Not that I'm going to work the whole 2 years. Yeah, you need to feel. When you have a solo exhibition, you need to have something to say.
Right.
If not, no point doing a solo. That means you want to say something. And.
But also the gallerist will have certain requirements.
Oh yes, of course,
And so
of course.
How do you come to a?
Depending again on who you're working with.
Okay.
With Valentine, it was very easy because he basically let me do what I want. Some galleries are a bit more controlling. Because it is a business after all, and they want the paintings to sell, so they might try to steer you, into doing certain things.
But Valentine did say that he liked that you were always open to his suggestions and ideas. You weren't hell bent on it's your way or the highway kind of thing. So that was nice.
I thought we worked well together. I mean, but I was painting in JB.
Okay.
Yeah, he was in KL.
And you were saying something about the importance of hanging the painting.
Oh yeah,
That's all important in an exhibition.
Yeah, when the work is done and you get into the gallery, how you place the paintings is extremely important. Because wrong placement can cancel a painting out, each other out. It's coordination actually. It's like dressing up. If you wear this kind of shirt, what sort of pants and what sort of watch, and so hanging a painting on the wall is like that. This one works better with that one.
Right.
So you have to sort of juggle things up. The amount of space in between the painting. You don't want to cram up the gallery too much. Yeah. But working, on a solo. Hanging a solo is quite easy because it's one person's work.
Right.
But hanging a group show, that's a different story. When you have 10 artists, for example, with 10 different styles, 10 different mediums, and hanging can be quite tough, to make all of them talk,
Yes.
so that they are in a room and they are not at odds with each other, that harmony. It's feng shui actually, Yeah.
So, Zakii, you were talking about your favorite piece. Is that one of them?
Yeah, it's part of the series, this particular work, it's called Tales from the Primordial Garden. But this it's not a painting, this is a photograph. Actually, it's a composite, The white tigers were taken in the Singapore Zoo. The man was taken in my studio. And the background, the pond and the foliage was in actually Zoo Negara.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was this 3 elements.
So this is not Singapore. The pond is not Singapore.
No, the pond is in Zoo Negara actually. But the idea, I mean, it doesn't really matter where these things comes from, but I needed to show this man who stays calm when he's surrounded by tigers.
Predators.
By predators, But then again, you're not sure, maybe the tigers are not there to harm him.
Yes.
Yes. So you have that ambiguity.
Yeah.
And why is he looking like he's almost like in a prayer or like he's contemplating?
Yes.
So there's a lot of things that's going on in the work, which raises a lot of questions, but doesn't really give you an exact answer. Yeah. But that's what I like about making art, You have the room to sort of roam.
To put yourself into
what and to interpret yourself, It doesn't have to be my interpretation,
But certainly for me, that the Malayan tiger is on the brink of extinction.
Yes.
So that sort of shows man in communion and in balance with the tigers, which is not what's happening now.
Yeah, that's right. But
Which
yeah,
touches
always it touches about man and how he relates to the universe, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, in Western society, man is always the protagonist, the one who invades and attacks and you know,
And it's powerful.
and is powerful and he's the master of his destiny, you know. But in Hinduism, in Sufism, is the opposite, you know. Yeah, man is part of a structure of the whole ecosystem, you know.
It's just one element.
One
in the whole
element,
thing.
yeah.
Especially when he's naked,
Yeah.
he's so much
That
more
means
vulnerable.
he's vulnerable.
than the tiger.
Yeah, that's how I see it. The reason for
Yeah.
the nudity is the vulnerable.
Yeah.
So, Zakii, actually, I want to come back to that feeling that you were talking about because I had goosebumps when you were talking about that.
Yeah.
And I want to come back to that feeling because I remember reading about your visit to Bali and you felt that emotional response
Yeah.
to Bali. So, could you tell us why, as an artist, Bali was so special to you?
I think if you're a creative person, you'll immediately feel it in Bali. You know, Bali is a special island, you know. Despite the cost, the commercialization, the tourists and all that, it is still special, you know, because I think the creative spirit there is extremely high, you know. So as an artist, you feel it, you know. I feel it immediately. Whenever I land in Bali, I can feel it, you know. And, you know, in Bali, the culture, you know, the dance, the drama, the music, it is actually a celebration of spirituality, you know, openly, you know. For example, the most prominent figure in Balinese theater probably is the Rangda and the Barong, you know. The Barong represents good, and the Rangda represents evil, you know. But after the performance, the costumes and the masks of these two creatures, you know, are placed side by side in the temple, you know. It is like yin and yang, actually. It is like black and white, you know. It is actually one, but there's this, I don't know what they call it, the dichotomy, you know, it's negative and positive, you know, good and evil, you know. It is constantly present in life, you know. And the Balinese acknowledges that, yeah. You know, they have their sacred cloth, you know. It's this cloth which is like the checkered flag, you know, just black and white checkered flags, you know. It's that,
Right.
you know, black and white, you know.
Balance.
Yeah, and it all, you know, it all should be balanced, you know. Because as human beings, you know, we constantly fluctuate. Is it? Sometimes you're good, sometimes you're naughty, you know. Yeah, so it's because of this interplay of these two things, you know, good and evil, you know. That has always been a part of my art, actually. You know, this gray areas. You know, you see, a human being. You know, if we go just a bit into theology, you know, it's always said that man is created in the image of the divine. You know, if you look at Michelangelo and Leonardo, you know, the statue of David is perfectly proportioned, you know, to reflect the divine presence, you know, the perfection of the divinity, you know. That's why Michelangelo will never draw an ugly person or a fat person, you know. Or Leonardo's Vitruvian Man, you know, the man outstretched with the circle around it, you know. It is about man and his perfectly proportioned, you know, it sort of reflects a certain universal order. Yeah.
So, Zakii, you're famous or infamous for your nude men.
Yeah.
And they've had a lot of accolades, but also a lot of controversy.
Yeah.
Why have you focused so much on naked men?
yeah, because of like what I was saying, the nature of man. Um, this idea that man is made in the image of the divine, like in the Quran, for example, it says that when God created Adam, he blew his spirit into Adam,
Right.
you know. So if you look at it closely, you'll find that there are two components that made up Adam, One is the spirit of God, and the other is the physical body. Yeah. So the spirit, because it comes from God, it is pure light. It is perfect, flawless. The body, without the spirit, is considered as pure darkness. Like a corpse. Like a dead person. It will rot and start to smell. So you have these two things, light and dark. Which sort of synthesize together. Yeah. So it is the nature of things that when two things of different natures gets together, you will produce a third. For example, if you add sugar and sugar, you get nothing, just more sugar. But if you add sugar and salt, you'll get a third flavor. You know? So the essence of creation is actually the combination of two things of different natures, so that it synthesizes and creates a third, So when God blew his spirit into Adam, these two things meet, light and dark. So what is the third thing that it produced? The third thing it produced is the soul, That's why some people mistake the soul and the spirit to be the same thing, but it's not. Yeah, the soul lives in an isthmus in between light and dark because it is the child of these two things. Okay. Yeah, so sometimes that's why a human being is constantly fluctuating. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes happy, sometimes sad. We are constantly in sometimes we like this thing and tomorrow we don't like it anymore, Yeah. So that is because we live in this land of the in-between, in this isthmus,
And that's in many of your paintings. You have the symbol of the burnt match.
Yeah.
Is that's between the two realms?
Yeah, it signifies a lot of things, but anyway, in most of the works, this is the area that I play with, in the nudes, for example, Today, when you look at it as a nude body, the first thing that goes into most people's mind is sex or something erotic or dirty. That's just because we have been conditioned to look at it that way through the TV and music video. I saw, what was it, the Grammy Awards the last couple of weeks. Yeah. Obviously, sex is something that sells. So we have been conditioned to look at.
Also forbidding, right? If you hide the body, then when you reveal it, it becomes something taboo almost.
Yeah. So when I paint the nude, it is not about the erotic or the sex, It is about man's connection with the divine, with the universe, That's why he's nude. I don't want to put him in a costume which is recognizable, whether he's a Malay or a Chinese or a Caucasian or and you'll notice that in the nudes, there are no backgrounds too, he's on a white space. So you can't identify him as coming from the East or the West, So in that sense, he becomes a universal figure,
So, how does the growing conservatism and Islamization in Malaysia affect that part of your work?
It doesn't really, because somehow I've been lucky. The one has come after me.
Very good to know. But also going back to Bali a little bit, Zakii, because you had a fascinating story to tell. You met an artist in Ubud, as I understand. So could you tell us that story and what work came out of that?
The artist I met was Ida Bagus Made, you know. Ida Bagus Made is very old when I met him. He's one of Bali's most prominent artists. So when I met him, he was sitting by the street, you know, but he's easily recognizable because he looks like an Apache chief, you know. He has this long white hair, you know, very photogenic, you know. And we talked, you know, and he told me he studied art with Walter Spies, you know, who's a German painter that was in Bali during that time. And he told me a lot of stories about Balinese artists and all that, you know. And then he invited me to his studio. He was carving a Rangda mask, you know. A Rangda mask is supposed to be sacred, you know. So he tells me, you know, every step of the process is sacred. From the cutting of the tree, or just that part of the tree that you need. You know, you don't cut the whole tree, you know. Just the part that you need. You have to have prayers. You bring it to the temple, more prayers, you know. Then the carving process, more prayers, you know, until it's complete, you know. So I was inspired to paint him, actually, you know. But then I thought, if I paint this guy, I must paint him with the mask that he was carving, you know. So I did the painting in 2 panels. You know, one is his portrait, and the other is the Rangda mask. You know, this kind of things. You know, this series I did. Again, it is like an investigation into your relationship with the divine, you know. Always, you know, when you have a picture of the person, of the artist, and then the work that he produced, you know, it is almost like reflective of the maker and his creation, you know, that kind of thing, you know. So it was this kind of things which interest me, yeah, which allows me to explore, you know, allows me to understand deeper about the nature of things.
So these are some of your weapons. You said you collect weapons.
Yeah, I have a fascination with weapons, you know. The kris, and these are obviously what you call spears. Yeah.
Are they Malaysian or?
They're Malay.
Malay spears.
Yeah, they're Malay spears. You know.
Interesting.
That's part of history, actually. Culture, rather.
Yeah, you know. But I love it because, again, of that duality. You know, the yin and the yang. You know, the beauty and the violence, you know,
right,
or the sacred and the profane, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's a cupboard full of kris.
Yeah, you know. So this is just part of the collection. There's more.
Okay. Oh gosh, look at that!
Wow.
Yeah.
Some of the workmanship is exquisite.
So yeah, this is one of my hobbies.
And masks, I see.
Yeah,
you
and
like
masks. I collect masks too. You know.
And I remember you started your series about the figures smoking.
Yeah.
And their faces were masked by smoke.
Yeah.
And you needed that. The brother who founded LaSalle School.
Joseph McNally. To point it out.
Because you couldn't understand why they had smoke.
As an artist, you work through instinct.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
If you feel an inclination to paint something, you do it without thinking or rationalizing. You know, you just do it because you feel it's right. And normally, when you feel that it's right, it must resonate with you somehow, somewhere in your subconscious, perhaps. Because your subconscious is a reservoir of all the experience that you have experienced in your life, So it must have connected somewhere there. That's why you feel compelled to put it on canvas, Yeah. Yeah.
Talking of smoking, I see there's quite an impressive collection of pipes.
Yeah, well, I've been trying to reduce my cigarettes. So I've started smoking the pipes. But as you can see, there are a lot of pipes.
Yes.
And this is the paraphernalia that goes
Yeah.
for the tobacco, is it?
Yeah. My wife says, "How come you need so many pipes?" I say, "How come you need so many handbags?"
Well, that's true. Actually, that is true. So you work with different mediums, Zakii, acrylic, oils, charcoal, watercolor. So how do you decide which medium best suits which painting you're going to do?
Sometimes that comes with. It's not a logical choice, It's more of a gut feeling. Yeah, you feel. You see, working on canvas will produce certain characteristics, Working with charcoal on paper will produce a totally different feel to the work, because of the nature of the medium, Especially when working with paper, because paper is a very fragile medium, yeah, and paper is something which carries a lot of what do you call values, because everyone touches paper, We are very familiar with paper. You're not familiar with canvas. You don't touch canvas every day, But you touch paper every day, money, letters, summonses, So paper always has emotional resonance to it, So when you work on paper, especially when I work with charcoals on paper, I do not really work with a charcoal stick. What I do is I ground the charcoal, into powder form, yeah, and then I put it on a paper plate, and I'll use my fingers, and I'll start rendering. So my finger touches the paper directly, rather than in a painting I have the intermediary of the brush, But in the charcoal, it is my finger that goes directly onto the paper, So.
And Indra Ramanathan says you only work with a particular type of paper from Singapore. You have to ferry paper to your studio from Singapore.
Yeah, it's French, and somehow they stopped distributing it here. I was so mad, and then I found it in Singapore, and then last couple of months I checked because I couldn't go down to Singapore, right, because of the lockdown. I checked with the shop. They say they have no more stock. They don't know when it's coming in. So, but in the end, I found it on the Shopee.
Fantastic.
Incredible. What you find in Lazada and Shopee, But anyway, I found it in the Shopee, and I ordered a whole bunch, because they come in rolls.
Okay.
So the emotional connection, is it more because you're feeling, is that how you feel?
Yeah, because especially the nudes, I always like doing the nudes in charcoal because by the time the drawing is over, my fingers would have gone all over the body itself, I've touched every square millimeter of the body, And you impart a certain energy into it, yeah? A certain part of yourself goes into the drawing, So if when the drawing hangs on the wall, hopefully you're not just seeing the naked man, Hopefully you are sensitive enough to sense something, a connection, It is this kind of thing, It is not black and white. It is not, a work of art for me. It's not like you're reading a book, where there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a conclusion to the story, But a painting is more like a poem, you know. It has many layers, it has many meanings, it can be something else today and, you know, another thing tomorrow, you know. It mutates, it changes, it's liminal, like a person, you know. I want it to be like a human being, you know, someone who changes his mind, changes how he look at things, you know. A painting should be like that, you know. So you engage with the painting over a period of time, rather than seeing it on the wall and you figure out everything there is to know about it and that's it, you know. There's nothing more to engage.
It's like evolving, is it?
Yeah. So you need to have that certain mystery in a work of art. Yeah. Something intangible, you know. Normally, sometimes I want the work to be like a little capsule or a pill that goes into your mind and stirs things up, you know. All the dusty areas, or, you know, people are so fixed in how they want to see things, you know. You want to disturb that a bit and make them look somewhere else or in a different angle, you know.
There's two pieces of art I'm going to ask you about. One is a fabulous recent series of yours, which is the Varanasi series. That's charcoal, right?
Yeah, that's in charcoal.
So how did that come about? Because that you went to India and then...
Yeah. You know, a friend of my wife was getting married. So my wife said, "Do you want to go to India?" I said, "Well, yes." So we went for the wedding, and after the wedding, you know, we went to Varanasi, you know. So it was, it was fantastic, I thought, you know. Another place where you feel the spirituality. Yeah. Yeah, it's so strong, you know. You know, I'm open to all kinds of religions, actually. You know, it's not a big problem for me, you know. I'm a Muslim, yeah. But I'm sensitive to other religions, you know. And Varanasi is such a unique place, you know. So, but we weren't there very long. We were just there for a couple of nights, you know. I must go back, you know. Yeah. But immediately when I returned, you know, I immediately started on this series of, it was just portraits, charcoal portraits of the people I met there.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So the other one I will ask you about before I hand over to Chaco again is of course your portraits of our Malaysian icons, P. Ramlee and Saloma, and how the two portraits became a three. Yeah. So maybe you could just explain that. What happened?
Oh, yeah. That particular work.
That was watercolor, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was
which is
watercolor.
more difficult for you. That's what you said. Yeah,
it was. Watercolor is one of the mediums which I've always struggled with. You know, I can do acrylics, charcoal, oils. You know, but watercolor somehow I always struggle with it. You know, but that particular work was something I decided to do after a break from painting. You know, I spent about a year doing photographs, and then when I started painting again, you know, I decided to use watercolor, and I decided to do something small and simple. You know, and I've always wanted to paint P. Ramlee and Saloma because I've always loved them. You know, I grew up with, you know, with them. You know, so I did these two portraits, and in the beginning it didn't quite work. You know, this double portrait of P. Ramlee and Saloma. You know, and I thought I needed another panel to make it like a triptych, you know, to make it work. So I added like a rose right in the center, you know, and immediately the painting visually worked, you know. So it was an experiment. I was actually looking for a new visual language, you know. So that painting was the first. It was just an indication. To do this series of works in 3 or 4 panels. So that portrait of Piramli and Saloma sort of triggered a whole series of works later on. Yeah. So this is an exhibition of young up and coming Malaysian artists. This is organized by my wife, Sirani. So maybe I will talk to her.
Yes. Hello, welcome.
Yes, so you run the gallery,
Yes, I do. And
among one of the many things you do, right?
yes, yeah, this is a show that opened recently of 7 young artists. It's called 7 Ways of Seeing, and it actually refers to the seminal essays by the art critic Berger. And he talked about how artists could show different ways of seeing through their art. And so we thought we would carefully select 7 young artists who would be able to show us 7 different ways to look at art or transform the way we look at things through their artworks.
So this artist is Haz Yusuf.
Yes, Haz Yusuf actually, she's one of the few young artists who did not graduate from UITM because a majority of the young artists in Malaysia either graduated from UITM or Malaysian Institute of Art. But Haz graduated from University of Manchester just a couple of years ago. She's only 26 years old. And she decided to study art because she was so impressed and she really admired the Italian classical period paintings. And she decided that she wanted to study art because she was so inspired by the paintings. And that's why she studied art in Europe. And as you can see her work here, with the arches and nudes with very restrained palette, and the way she paints her nudes with oil. It's an ode to the Italian Renaissance paintings, including the palette as well. And she wanted to show simplicity and vulnerability and purity through nudes.
So the Italian Renaissance keeps inspiring Malaysian artists, not just Zakii, right?
Yeah.
So who are the other
As a
artists?
matter of fact, she said Zakii was one of her
Inspirations.
inspirations. As in, Zakii is like her reference when she tries to paint like the masters of the old period, of the classical period. Yeah, the technique of the masters, which is like a lot of layers with oil. Yes, so she says Zakii does that as well.
So from painting figures and the Varanasi figures and so on, you've also made a name for yourself painting animals. And they're huge, also in charcoal, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the animal series, again, it's actually an exploration of my personality, I mean, there are parts of us which is quite animal-like, especially when it comes to passion and things like that, anger or, So I've always been intrigued by taking a certain thing and making it more than what it is, for example, For example, during my first solo with Valentine, I painted these 2 sofas. They're just ordinary sofas. With just a sofa alone, with no one sitting on it. But what I wanted to do was to turn this sofa into like a shrine almost. I wanted to see whether I can do that. Whether I have the ability to sort of turn something so mundane or so boring as ordinary as a sofa and turn it into something extraordinary, whether I have the skill to do that. And so the sofa paintings were about that, I wanted the sofa to be almost like a shrine to sort of glow and shine, you know. The animal paintings, in a sense, are like that too, you know.
And you've said that you put a little bit of yourself into the animals.
Yeah, that's the only way you can do it, actually.
Okay.
You know, to turn something dead like a sofa into something alive, you have to inject yourself into it. You know, you have to put some of your personality into it. You know, so that it becomes more than just a sofa. You know, with the animals, it's the same. You know, I did a series. Some of my favorite animals are, I don't know, some people find them really ugly. You know, the warthog, for example. The babirusa, you know.
And every detail, all the bristles and bits of hair,
you know,
it's just
the
amazing.
babirusa actually is a small animal, quite dirty. You do not want to take it home with you, you know. But I wanted to give it a personality, you know. I wanted to inject a bit of myself into it and see what happens, you know. So that's why I did it big, you know, and I did it in charcoal and a lot of it was very heavy work, you know, a lot of layers, you know, because the more you work, the more you put in, the more comes out, you know, and the babirusa was that, you know, to turn something small and not so beautiful into something magnificent, you know. And I did a series of that with other animals, warthogs, rhinos, and
then you've got a series where you combine
the two
your male
together.
nude with the animals, the tales of the primordial garden, which are fascinating.
Yeah. Again, it's an exploration of human nature. You know?
And that's photographs, right?
There are some which are paintings,
Okay.
and some which are photographs. You know, the early ones were paintings. The later ones were a series of photographs. Yeah. So that is something which, like I said, you know, this dual nature of man. You know, because he lives in this isthmus between the light and the dark, you know. So he fluctuates between the two, you know. So this is the area which I love exploring, you know. So things are never fixed or never a single answer, but it can be many layers of answers, you know.
And then something that struck me also is your Kota Sunyi, Kota Sepi series. Those are people on the fringes of society from Johor? JB?
Yeah, from Johor.
Okay.
Yeah, that particular series, you know, I've never, you know, I grew up in Johor Bahru, you know, and most of my paintings doesn't. In fact, you can't see anything local in the works I do, you know. I don't identify myself as a Malaysian artist or whatever, you know. I try to be as what they call ambiguous as possible, you know. But that particular series, Kota Sepi, Kota Sunyi, was actually, first of all, a homage to JB, the town I grew up in, you know, the streets I walk. I don't sleep at night.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've described yourself as a vampire.
Yeah, you know, I sleep maybe at 4 in the morning or something like that, you know. So at night, you know, when I'm in JB, you know, I love going out to the mamak shop in town, you know, at 3 or 4 in the morning, you know, during that hour. So Kota Sunyi was actually a series that sort of reflected that. Yeah.
It's wonderful. It's people that we normally don't see. Now make us see them, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
The sculpture is a very interesting young artist from Sarawak. His name is Mazlan. He's very versatile. He used many different mediums before in previous shows like metal, wood, but this time he was locked up in a room, he said, in Johor during the lockdown. So he couldn't get any materials, but then he kept drinking a lot of water. And so he had all these, like a ton of plastic bottles of water. So he decided to experiment. And he melted, bottles, plastic bottles, and then decided to paint them with bitumen. And then he stuck all these steel rods into them. And this is called kelompok tinggi, basically like standing tall together, like everyone needs support. And he was all alone, and that's why he said he created a few figures for company.
Amazing what's come out of it.
What came out of lockdown?
This again is very different.
Right. So, just going into something completely different, which is a few years ago you were involved with the Life Zone shelter, a completely different aspect of your life. And I please share with us how that came about.
Okay. Yeah, that's a part of my life, which, I sort of lead a dual life, But not anymore, I'm less active now at Life Zone. But anyway, that started, wow, that was a long time ago, 2003, I think, It actually started with a friend of mine. He's a pastor. He was a former addict, and he met someone who converted him and saved him, So he became a pastor, and he always had this dream of opening a shelter for addicts, We were always talking about it, but he couldn't raise the funds, to do that. One day I said, if you agree to make this a place for, I didn't want it to be a Christian center or a Muslim center or a Malay or a Chinese center. It was meant to be for everyone, So if we can do that, I said, I'll help you, set up the place, So that's how it started. So we rented a shop lot upstairs, which was quite cheap. And there were a few addicts who were following my friend, he was looking after them, and they cleaned up the place, and we started the shelter then, We operated for about a year and a half, until at that point, I think HIV was getting quite bad in Malaysia,
Yes.
Johor had the highest rate of HIV infection, So the government started a pilot project.
Okay.
I don't know whether you heard of it. It's called the Needle and Syringe Exchange Program. Harm reduction. It wasn't publicized because the government doesn't want to be seen doing that, because you're actually, you see what it's harm reduction. So you're giving, instead of stopping addicts from taking drugs, you're teaching them to shoot cleanly, so that they safely, so that they don't infect their family. Because the highest form of rate of infection in Malaysia is through sharing needles, addicts sharing needles, So the first thing you need to do is stop them from sharing needles, So the government adopted this project, but they can't do it on their own. So they started approaching NGOs, And our NGO was one of the NGOs that they look into, They look at other NGOs in JB, somehow they like us best, And they chose us to, they chose us to do the, like a pilot 1-year project, So with that came training, money, and Life Zone grew. It became quite big, until I think it was 2005 when my partner Abraham, he had a stroke.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a stroke and he couldn't work anymore. So I had to take over.
Okay.
You know, before that I wasn't very active, but after he had the stroke, then I had to take over to run the place. I ran the place for about 6-7 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, we had a shelter for people with HIV. We had outreach workers that goes to see addicts, you know, and teach them how to shoot cleanly. Yeah, that sort of thing, you know. So, and we were operating all over Johor, you know, in Muar, Batu Pahat, Kluang, and all that.
So today in KL, you do a lot of work for young artists, right? I know you're exhibiting some of their works in your gallery.
Yeah. Whenever we have exhibitions here, we always invite a lot of young artists to show with us, you know. This current show here is organized by my wife, you know.
Okay.
She chose the artists, you know, all of them are in their mid-20s. Yeah. And all of them are basically quite set in their style, and you know, but they're still young, still searching, still developing. Put it that way, yeah. So the current show is that, you know.
How wonderful to be able to show with you or in your gallery.
Yeah. You know, so yeah, it's always nice, you know, meet and talk with young artists. Yeah.
That's very good of you and Suryani. And what do you do when you're not painting to relax or to have fun?
I read a lot.
Okay.
I also watch a lot of movies. Yeah. Apart from that, my only other hobby is I collect weapons. Yeah.
And this is a very interesting young artist. He's a painter. And as you can see, his painting has a lot of displaced objects. So ordinary objects that are normally indoors, he puts outdoors.
His Faiz Muhyiddin.
Faiz Mahdun.
Mahdun, sorry.
Yeah, Faiz Papa Mahdun. And it's very surreal. As you can see, all his setup is very surreal because objects that are not supposed to be there are there, and what are not supposed to be there, you know. And he displaces a lot of different objects and creates a really moody, surreal feel. And so he feels like very displaced. And he says that these are landscapes of his inner mind that he puts on canvas. Yeah, to reflect his feeling of displacement.
Zakii, you know, your late father was a founding member of UMNO, so I'm assuming that when you were growing up, UMNO was running through your veins. But you don't actually do political commentary in your art. But recently, you produced a poster with Malaysians showing the middle finger to, and you quote unquote politicians that have messed up our country. So what drove you to that?
Well, obviously, you know, I don't touch on politics in my works, you know, but I think the situation in our country was just a bit too much, you know, and I had to say something, you know. I think I said it quite politely with that, you know. Because everyone was quite charming and pretty, you know. They're cartoony, you know. I think I should be more...
I think you made your point. Yes. Without a doubt, yes.
Thank you for that. I think you expressed what many of
All
us
of
are
us,
feeling.
so many of us are feeling. So I'll wrap up my couple of questions and then I'll hand over to Chako to wrap up the session. But when your connection with the canvas, and I can see that there's clearly this spiritual connection that you have. You pour yourself into your paintings. The thought of you doing your charcoal, you know, nudes, you know, with your hand, it's just, to me, absolutely fascinating. How do you get that? How do you feel? I mean, when you do that that work? What is your feeling with the canvas, your connection with the canvas?
It is a relationship, actually. You have every particular work will have its dynamics, its issues, but what you're trying to do is sort of dance with it, so that you're both in step, so that there's not too much conflict going on, a work of art, for me, a work of art is when I'm working on it, For most people, it's what they see on the wall in the gallery or in the house, It's already done, but the making of it, for me, is what it's all about,
How long does it take to make a typical work?
It depends. It can be a few days, it can be a few weeks. Again, it depends on the relationship that you're having with the work, with that particular work you're doing, Sometimes, just like in any relationship, sometimes it's easy. Things just work, Like you were made for each other, every stroke is right, and then the work finishes very fast. But sometimes you encounter resistance, problems, Just like a relationship with people, You might have issues, Sorry. So those kind of works will take a bit more time to do. But then that struggle sometimes shows through, It adds to the history of the work, You're adding layers of emotions into it, And hopefully, the canvas becomes a conduit, like a wire that carries electricity, The canvas becomes a conduit, to carry your feelings, for the audience, So, and you hope that the audience is sensitive enough or have enough in them to sort of feel something, rather than just seeing a naked man.
It's amazing. And your favorite series? Are you able to
I must say the nudes.
The nudes.
The nudes, and also the man and the nudes, the animals,
Right.
Yeah, the animals and the nude series.
Combo.
The combination of both, again, like I was saying, the play of human nature, the duality of human nature, it's all out there somewhere. Yeah.
So if I wanted to purchase an Ahmad Zakii Anwar, if I could ever afford to, but you're saying that, even with a few, like 10, 15,000, you might be able to purchase.
Oh yeah,
some
the smaller
of your
works.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have $250,000.
No.
So how does one go about that?
You have to see my wife.
Okay.
Your manager.
But they're also available in various galleries as well, right?
No longer. I don't work very much nowadays, so a lot of my works have sort of they're showing overseas.
Right. I mean, I've seen your work in Los Angeles.
One of my favorite things to do is travel. So if I get an offer to show in Los Angeles or in New York, I'll say yes, because,
Why not?
yeah, I get to, show there, and I get to travel there, So a lot of the works are out there somewhere, and but here, basically my wife runs the gallery, and if you want my work, you just give her a call. Yeah.
And you're not working on anything right now, you said.
Not very much, because I have canceled all exhibitions this year. I was supposed to have a show in Manila, this year, but the situation is such that you can't have a show now, So, it's postponed. So I'm sort of cruising, I'm not doing much.
Is there a series that you're planning that we can look forward to, perhaps?
Yes, there is, but it's not fully
Crystallized yet.
Yeah, it's not fully realized yet. I've been working on it for a couple of years now, but I want to do a series where I consolidate everything that I've done in the past into a summary, for example, just a final thing, a final series, yeah, and then I'll retire.
No, you can't retire. You can't retire, Zakii Anwar.
Sure. Well, I think
Yes.
you've taken enough of your time, and it's been really a delight and so insightful. And thank you for sharing and being so
Most
open
welcome.
about your
Yeah,
work.
most welcome.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Zakii. Thank you so much. I mean, the passion with which you speak about your work. I think many of us who work can only hope we would ever feel that way about what we do. But I can see where your artwork gets its electricity and its form. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. Well, we look forward to speaking to you again and seeing your next series.
Thank
All
you
the
very
very
much.
best for that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Zakii. Thank you, Suryani. For
Thank you, Suryani. Thank you very much.
Home.
Thank you all very much for staying with us till the end of this podcast. I'm going to pass this next bit over to Chaco because you're supposed to remember all the links to all the social media. I can't do that, so please, Chaco, it's all yours.
Well, I mean, neither can I, but yes, we're on all the social media platforms that you would imagine. The links are all below. Do check the description there. Subscribe and look out for announcements about our next exciting and interesting guest on Bole. See you then.